Take 5 with Ricovibes, the ultimate in entertainment. Live interviews, social commentary, and so much more. Go tell somebody you're now locked into Take 5 with Ricovibes. This episode of Take 5 with Ricovibes is brought to you by
Memory Lane Sundays is now at a new location. 8 Rivers Event Space, 4407 Covington Highway in Decatur, starting February 16. John Wayne Movements and Jammy present Memory Lane Sundays. This and every Sunday night, 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. 8 Rivers Event Space. It's liming with a difference, with local and international DJs spinning your favorites. Enjoy great food and drinks on sale. Games like Ludo and Dominoes from 7 to 10 p.m. Want to celebrate your birthday? Come celebrate it with us at Memory Lane Sundays. We've got extra special birthday packages to make it an unforgettable celebration. This and every Sunday, 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. Memory Lane Sundays, 8 Rivers Event Space, 4407 Covington Highway in Decatur, 30035. Free entry and parking. Visit JohnWayneMovementsEvent.com. Call 404-454-2949 or 678-595-2374. Powered by John Wayne Movements and Jammy. Memory Lane Sundays. Don't miss it.
Gal Farm Thursdays goes down each and every Thursday night. The #1 Caribbean party every Thursday. Gal Farm. Ladies enter absolutely free until 1 a.m. $25 hookahs until 1 a.m. $5 rum punch until 1:30. $100 bottle. Plus the $65 margarita rum punch tower. Music by Juggler Experience and the Gal Farm DJ. Free parking and Caribbean food fresh off the grill. Gal Farm. Gal Farm Thursday. Each and every Thursday night at Smash Tacos and Tequila. 4144 Reed End Road in a Stone Mountain.
What's up, everybody? It's yours truly, Ricovibes, and this is Take 5. I got a very special guest in the building, Dr. Damion Blake. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you, Rico?
I'm doing okay. It's good to say doctor. And such a young doctor as well. What are you a doctor in?
All right, what am I a doctor in? Well, I'm a doctor of philosophy. Okay. So my PhD was in political science. So I'm a political scientist by training.
Okay. So we can see a future president in the making?
Well, I don't know.
Or prime minister?
We'll see.
We'll see
how that goes, right? In the second half of my life's career, I think. I know I'm in the 40s, so see, maybe 10 years from now, 10, 15 years, we'll see. You might go into representational politics, maybe.
We need people like you, the younger generation, the millenniums.
Yeah, I've been hearing that.
We do.
And I think more progressively, young people are going into that field, and so it is something that I do have in the back of my head, or side of my mind, that I might do at some point.
Okay, that's what's up. I'm looking at your book, Dada. Is this your first book?
First book.
Okay. What inspired you to write a book?
Well, this book came out of some things I saw on the TV in 2010. Okay. And Jamaicans will know that in 2010 there was the Jamaican state, the police and the military went after one of Jamaica's crime bosses from the Tivoli Gardens community. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? I grew up in Jamaica. I'm born and bred Jamaican.
Right.
But I've never really saw that side of Jamaica. I heard about it, but never really was intimately acquainted with it. And so I began to question my own Jamaicanness. How could I not know about this happening in my own country? And at the time, I was doing my PhD at Virginia Tech University in Virginia. And I got a grant. And I'm like, let me investigate this some more. And so I went to Jamaica. And I spent a year in several communities in Kingston investigating this phenomenon.
They allowed you to come into the community?
Was
it under disguise?
No, it wasn't a disguise. Actually, it's funny you ask that question, Rico. I did declare myself. I declared my hand, and people in the community were quite receptive. They spoke with me. Some obviously not on camera. At that time, I had a little recorder. Gotcha. I had my notebook taking notes. There were actors in that community who, let's say, were below the law, and they themselves even would speak with me as well.
Really?
So yes, they did speak with me, and they wanted to tell their story.
Got it.
And it's a very intriguing story, and one that I would say is part and parcel of the Jamaican history. It's deeply seated in Jamaican DNA. I mean, to understand Jamaica is to understand the underbelly of how this Jamaican society has emerged and evolved.
Wow. Me living in New York for 25 years, not being Jamaican, but
Yes.
being adopted by Jamaicans.
Right.
I go there a lot, and I go to Tivoli, I go to Jungle and those places, and not until I go there and come back to the U.S. and Jamaican says to me, "You went them places there?" And I'm like, "Why?" And like, I'm Jamaican and I wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
So I kind of did some little rough studies myself on the whole culture
Yes.
of the Donism and however you want to call it, and realize, why there's a need for Don.
Yes.
For Dons.
Yes.
Why there's a need for Dons in your research?
Yes. So the need for dons, I would say, really comes out of the Jamaican state not playing its part. So Jamaica got its independence in 1962.
Right.
Yes?
Right.
When it got its independence, two main political parties emerged. So I'll give it a quick story. The PNP, People's National Party, and the JLP, Jamaica Labour Party. And both parties really were in a very competitive race for power. And what they did was to use these, what they call enforcers, to mobilize to get votes for them.
Right.
And you have these several communities, the ones you spoke about, like
Right.
Tivoli Gardens, the Jungles, right? Communities in Spanish Town, right? All over various parts of Jamaica, what we call them garrison communities. Now, these garrison communities are like your inner city communities in New York City, like your favelas, that they call it in Brazil. They reek of governmental neglect. The state is not there playing its part.
Until they need your votes.
Until they need your votes,
Right.
right? So in comes these go-between actors known as the Dons. The Dons provide a kind of government within the Jamaican government. It's providing access to things like paying tuition fees for students to go to school, right? It's building some sports football field where kids can play. It's providing funds to the elderly person to go to the health clinic. So the power of the Don, or the need for Dons, emerged out of what I consider to be the neglect of the Jamaican state to provide those kinds of services. There are other reasons why the Dons also emerged, because Jamaican communities, particularly in cities like Kingston, right, they have become these very warring factions. So, of course, people from Jungle would say that they are in conflict with people from Tivoli Gardens, same Western Kingston, right? And sometimes there's a street that separates them. And so the Don brings a kind of security that the Jamaican police is either incapable or unwilling to provide. So that gives the Don, the need for the Don, or the power of the Jamaican Don. So they're providing these welfare rules, they're providing security in a space where the police has been unwilling or unable to provide it.
Wow. Does Dons only exist, or Jamaicans Dons, I should say, only exist in Jamaica?
That's a very good question, Rico. There's a new, I would say, kind of phenomena where we talk about what they call the foreign Don, right? That there are Dons who live overseas, particularly on the U.S. northeastern seaboard. So you're talking about all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, up to New York City, where they are in the U.S., but they are calling shots back home in communities. They are sending funds to their communities. They're providing treats, what they call it. Put on these treats for kids. They send back to school kinds of thing, which is a good thing.
Right.
But there's the underbelly side as well, right?
Of course.
And so a lot of the transshipment of weapons, for example, is coming through that kind of a network as well.
Now, you've talked primarily about the good side,
Right.
quote unquote,
Quote unquote good side. Yes.
of being a Don. How about the other side? Where you may say they keep order and not in the nicest ways.
Yes. And so the term that quickly comes to mind is jungle justice, right?
Correct.
And,
Correct.
Rico, when I was in the community speaking to community residents, one of the things that stood out to me, I remember speaking to this mother, and she said to me, and at the time they called me Prof. They said, Prof, we don't mourn the dead in this community. We just bury the dead. I'm like, what do you mean by that? It really, I had to step back. She's like, yeah, we just bury the dead. And it's like many young men have died in this community. fighting battles for these gangs and these dons, and that the dons will use a kind of iron fist to control these communities. So yes, they provide these kinds of access to resources, albeit sometimes in a small way, but they have a firm iron fist in terms of how they control communities. Women have said to me that, look, when the don or members of his gang send for your daughter for their pleasure, you have to acquiesce, you have to give in to that, right? So the don is a kind of what I call a benevolent despot, right? That he comes with goods, the carrots, but there is the firm hammer as well. And to disrespect the don and his gang can have very deadly consequences. So, you know, it's that kind of a dualism there with the Jamaican don. These are bad actors, right? These are guys who are part of organized criminal networks. They're talking about narcotics, gun trafficking, extortion rackets, gun for hire, that sort of a thing. So this isn't an excuse for organized criminality, but a way of better to understand in the kind of environment from which they were able to evolve and entrench themselves.
So you talk about the bad actors. Who decides who is the don? Is there a voting process? How does it work?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to go back to the voices of the people who I spoke to. And one guy said to me that if a man want to be a don, to use the Jamaican vernacular, to be a don, he needs 5 or more guns and 2 or more 3 men at his behest who follows him. And he can be a don on a particular corner. So the don is someone who has literally has access to weapons, has access to cash. The other interesting part about the dons is that they quite often have some connection to politics in Jamaica. In fact, that's where the story began. Remember when we just had a conversation, we talked about the 1960s.
Yes.
And a number of Jamaican dons, at least the old school dons, that's where they started, from the political connections that they had, being these sorts of enforcers. And so, you know, those are some of the things that a guy would have to be a don. And I stress on guy because most of Jamaican dons, if not, I would say 98.9% are men. There are female dons. I had that question when I was doing research. Well, I know what role do women play? Is it that they just, as Jamaicans say, wash the bloody shirt of the gangsters or hide the guns? There are female gangsters, not many. And if we go back to, there was a recent trial in Jamaica of a prominent gang in the city of Spanish Town, and there was a female who emerged as a kind of as a don in the group. But it's largely men who become dons, and so that then raises the questions about the risks for young men to become part of this organized criminal enterprise.
Now, you write in this book, who is your target audience?
Again, Rico, you're asking some of the very good questions. You know, the first target audience really was people like myself, Jamaicans like myself, who don't have a full understanding of our own country, right? As I said, I grew up in Jamaica, but never really understand the underbelly. So that's one. 2, it's also the people who live in these communities. In many ways, I think they're locked within these communities, and many of them are trying to find a way out, right? These aren't bad people. These are people who want the same things that you and I want. They want to have good quality of life, good education, upward mobility, but they find themselves locked in these communities because of they happen to be born in that community. The target audience is also for young men. You know, the main perpetrators of organized crime and violence in Jamaica are young men, but the main victims are also young men as well.
Absolutely.
And if one young man can read this book and understand that it's a dead end road, the gangster life is not it's not a thing to play with. Yes, there are some trappings of glory with it. I mean, there's the fast cars, there's the money. There is the girls that will flock you because you are the real man. But in the end, it always ends very badly. Either the jailhouse or the graveyard. It's a dead end road. And so that's one of the main kinds of people I intend to reach with this book, to get them off that conveyor belt. It's a conveyor belt that produces young men who then become, ensnared in the life of organized crime. Wow.
Now, you being the messenger,
yes,
aren't you scared for yourself or your family?
No, I wouldn't say that I'm scared. I'm careful. So even in this book, I don't call names. I use pseudonym names.
Gotcha.
I don't call any of the communities that I did the work in. I see this work as a kind of public service to my country and to my countrymen, right? And as a way for the young generation coming up, that, Jamaica is a beautiful country. Our culture is so rich. That worldwide, that we really don't need organized crime. You don't have to follow that pathway, right? It's a country that is the top in culture, but it's also top in terms of homicides. Jamaica, the last 10 years, has ranked consistently in the top 10 most murderous countries in the world, and that has to change. So to answer your question, no, I'm not fearful for my life or my family's life about this, because I try to be respectful of how I do what I do and how I write about what I write.
Got it. Yes. What's the goalpost? The book is now available.
Yes.
Are we looking at movies, maybe?
Hey, well, it's all open. I mean, right. I would like to see perhaps a Netflix thing coming out of this. There have been numerous documentaries about organized crime and gangsterism and the outlaw in Jamaica.
Right.
I think what is different and perhaps a value added in this book is that it is connecting both the past and the present.
Gotcha.
And giving a kind of a full understanding of how we came to where we are. And at the end, I even suggest some solutions for getting out of that, which is interesting. I have to note that I have seen where the Jamaican state has actually started to make some moves in trying to deal with these problems. The homicides have gone down in Jamaica in the last year or so, about 19%. So there's been some improvements, but not enough to really completely change things. But yeah, that's perhaps...
you don't think they can really eradicate the need for a Don?
It's going to be difficult because I think it's embedded. It's a culturally embedded thing.
Right.
I mean, if you listen to the way Jamaicans talk, right?
Yeah.
This bad man culture, this badness, honor, is
Yeah.
deeply entrenched within Jamaican culture.
Yeah.
And so more than just the politics or the economics of violence and crime is the culture around that.
Yeah.
And that, a number of these young men now have access to other pathways, but they still gravitate towards that culture. And cultures are things that take a very long time to
take
change. Generations for them to change. Yeah.
But the way you described it earlier, it just seems like there is a need. If it's done properly,
yes,
there's a need, because the fact that they're providing good services at some point, the good side of that is they're providing services that's needed, that the government or whoever else is not providing. So there is a need. But who takes over that need once you get rid of the Dons? That's the question.
Yeah, and so the state now has to rehabilitate. The state has to go back into these forgotten communities.
Correct.
And Jamaica isn't an outlier on this. I mean, you look in parts of the Mexican state. Haiti. Right? Look at Haiti. That's what the gangs are. The gangs have emerged because the state has not played their part. Right?
Exactly.
In Brazil, in several parts of Latin America and the Caribbean. Right. And so one of the other things about my work is that it's targeting also the state, to say that for democracy to flourish, for democracy to work well for everyone, the state has to be accountable, right? And the state's hand isn't clean. The Jamaican state hand has not been clean in this, right? They have been part and parcel of the problem. They have to be part and parcel of the solution as well.
Have you thought about that? Have you thought about going on to the other side, maybe the police, maybe the state, as you put it, and get their side of how to handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I have in the book, I did speak with members of Jamaican police. I did speak with elected officials as well. Right. So I get their side of the story. So this book is really bringing multiple voices together to better understand the problems there. And since I did the research for this book, I've done multiple conferences. I've had several kinds of consultations and conversations with the Jamaican state. There was a point when I was a consultant with the Jamaican government, the Ministry of National Security, and they had a program there which was trying to tackle youth problems and youth crime through, dealing with programs within the community from a soft, what one may call a softer side of taking on. Okay. It's not hard policing, right? Right. And that sort of a thing. So, yeah, I have put some of what I have learned from doing the research in terms of policy as well.
My question has always been, if guns are not being produced and manufactured in Jamaica, how there's so many guns in Jamaica? Yeah. And how do they get into Jamaica? Obviously, we're asking obvious questions. Yeah. But, those are questions that needs to be asked and needs to be answered.
These are very good, powerful questions. Yeah. And interestingly, myself and some other colleagues have just written another piece, not a book, but a scholarly article, and it's called The War on Guns. Because you have heard about the war on drugs. Correct. Right? The U.S. has been waging this war for years, right? Correct. Where they try to take on drug-producing countries and gangs that are shipping drugs. We argue that there should be a war on guns as well. Because the guns are being produced here in the U.S. and sent back into the global south, Mexico, the Caribbean, Jamaica, etc. Right. So, someone is benefiting from this transshipment of guns.
But they got the lobbyists who line the politicians' pockets.
It's a difficult fight in this country, particularly in the southern parts of this country where there's a strong connection to guns. Yes. So.
And the NRA make sure that your pockets get lined.
Yes. So. Yeah.
You didn't hear that. What else do you want folks to know about the book, or just the whole culture in general?
Well, the Jamaican culture is a vibrant culture. Jamaica is I would say, a global leader culturally. You talk about sports, you talk about entertainment and industry. Anywhere in the world you go and you say Jamaica, and you mention some Jamaican names, the Bob Marleys, the Usain Bolts, the culture stands on. But there's an underbelly, an underside. If you're a tourist going to Jamaica, you have nothing to fear. In fact, you may never see this because the tourist sector is a sanitized kind of,
and it's well protected.
Well protected because it's the Golden Goose. So you won't see this. Yes, but there is the other side of the Jamaican culture where there is neglect, governmental neglect. There is low levels of upward mobility. There's a culture that honors badness. And within that context, you have the evolution of the Don and gangs, right? And it is something that is a challenge to the Jamaican state and to its democracy, right? And many Jamaicans have said that, boy, in the diaspora, I want to go back home. I want to set up shop. I want to do this. I want to do that. But they're very fearful because of organized.
Yeah, when you read the papers every day, I don't want to bring light to it, but it exists. People come home from England and places like that, and a couple of days home, they're kidnapped, they're killed. Yeah, I would be fearful. Yeah, to go back there to set up shop there. Yeah,
yeah. There is certainly that fear, and it's something that has to be dealt with. Yeah, in Jamaica. But as I said, Rico, it apart from it being something that manifests through, the proceeds of crime or economics of crime, that there's the cultural side, which is not often spoken of, right? That what is it that makes a young man want to go the path of being a scammer? That's the newest thing to make to be a scammer rather than trying to be an engineer, even when he has the opportunity. Sometimes they do have the opportunity.
I mean, I think you got to be very intelligent to be a scammer.
Well, yes,
because the things they come up with, and the methods they come up with, you got to sit down and think about these things.
Yes. And on that point, I want to disavow our listeners who may think that dons and gangs are these band of roving bandits who are brainless. Some of them are, but quite a few of them are not. These are intelligent, calculated individuals who, if we could get that kind of energy and that mindset onto other platforms, then, really good things could happen.
I remember, growing up or being born in Nevis, one of my first recollections of Jamaica was cricket.
Cricket, yes.
And my favorite cricketer was always Lawrence Rowe. I don't know, you're probably too young for that.
Yeah. My father told me Yaga Rose was the name.
Right. So I remember when he made 302 and we were in glee because nobody ever made that before.
Yes.
So moving to the US and then mixing amongst Jamaicans and then hearing all about this stuff and all that, it was really, I was in awe.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it because, as a Nevis guy, Jamaica was the Mecca of the Caribbean.
Yes.
So learning about this now, I'm still in awe.
Yeah.
About it.
Yeah. And in doing the research, it's almost like this parallel running.
Yeah.
Because there is that there in the research, right? About the culture,
Correct.
about the cricket, about the football, the netball,
athletes.
right? The street dances, which
Correct.
is, street dances are these rich cultural enterprises.
Oh, yeah.
Right? In the dancehall space is a rich space, right? Of people and the guys who are selling their wares, selling cigarettes and that sort of a thing. But running alongside that is the underbelly.
Right.
Yeah.
There's got to be a yin and a yang.
I suppose.
That yang is a little bit much.
It's yanging.
Yes. How can folks get the book?
Well, the book is on Amazon. So if you just go on Amazon, you can get it. It's also at the University of West Indies Press. That's at UWI Mona campus. Right. They have it there in their bookshop and online as well. In fact, I did a Google search of the book, and it's also in Target. So Target is in Target. If you want, yes, online you can get it on Target. Okay.
How many pages?
It's about 135 pages. Okay. So it's not that much big of a book. Right. And it's $35 for the book.
Is there an e-book available?
There is an e-copy as well. On Amazon, they have an e-copy as well. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So the book is called Dada, Accessing the Socio-economic and Political Power of Jamaica's Mafia Bosses.
Yes.
Do you call him Mafia?
Because it helps people to understand what I'm talking about. Sometimes we take it for granted that people know what a Don is, right?
Gotcha.
Because that's in a Jamaican audience.
Correct.
Even though the term Don has a European kind of origin, because the Don really comes out of the Italian context.
Correct.
Right? But when I use the Mafia bosses, they go, oh, that's what you mean. They get it. So I'm thinking more, not just of a Jamaican context, but even a global audience as well. People who have never known anything about this, they can understand what's going on there.
Is there any concepts for your next book? Because I know they got to be a follow-up.
There is a next book already. In fact, I have signed a contract with a company called Palgrave Macmillan out of Europe, and it's looking at deportation. So Jamaicans who are being deported and they find themselves in a spot of bother, but they have similar fears about either organized crime or that sort of a thing. So that book is coming out late next year, which is around the corner.
That should be interesting.
Yes.
Deportation. Wow.
So book me up, and I'll be back on your show to talk about the second book.
Yeah, deportees it used to be taboo, but now it's almost like glamorous.
And so in the book I try to help us to understand what's going on, why are people being deported, and why some of them are fearful of going back to Jamaica. It's an understudied area, so I'm trying to shed some more light on that.
Okay. Any final words?
Well, I would say get a copy of the book. It's user-friendly. There aren't any big onerous words. I'm an academic at heart, but I try to make my work accessible. And get your copy. Target, Amazon, UWI Press. It's there. All right.
I want to thank you so much. Give them your social media platforms as well.
On Instagram, it's Professor Damion Blake.
Okay.
On Instagram. What else do we have? We have Facebook. People use Facebook. Well,
people, the older folks use Facebook. don't shoot me. It is what it is.
It's true.
TikTok,
Damion Blake on Facebook. Damion Blake on TikTok as well. Right. So those are my handles. You can find me, can keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
I got to read the book.
All right. It's an easy read. It's an easy read.
Yeah, I've read 1,000 pages books. So
135 is nothing. Nothing. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Rico.
My special guest today, Professor Damion Blake. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. That's YouTube /Ricovibes. And catch you next time on another edition of Take 5.